Hi everyone. As promised, let's do a little intro into SketchUp. So this is for our class a cafe project. I want to show you importing a CAD drawing and beginning in SketchUp. This is going to be a 3 to 5 minute video, hopefully. So I hope this helps just speed up the process and refresh your memory. Okay, so first thing, to import an AutoCAD drawing, you want to go to the File pull down and you want to go to Import. When you go to Import, it's basically going to open up, of course, your Window Explorer, and you're going to find your file. And for us, it is 2D Cafe Plan 2020. I, just so you know, don't have AutoCAD installed on this machine, so that's why you're seeing a little white piece of paper versus you probably would see an AutoCAD icon in most cases. And then at the very bottom, all you need to do is hit the Import button. SketchUp gives you these import results, which are fantastic. It tells you which layers, blocks, arcs, circles, so you can kind of get an idea of how large the file is. It is not very large, and that is great. And I just hit close to this, and within probably, all depending on the size of the drawing, it should load within seconds, but again, the larger that it is, the longer it's going to take. So this is just very generically a cafe that was done in a high-rise here in Chicago, and it doesn't exist any longer, but it's a nice little exercise for us to kind of get our feet wet with learning SketchUp. So let me just kind of describe. There are walls off on the west and east side. There are walls north, and there's an exterior wall. You can guess just by looking at the exterior wall that is glass and steel, and it is. There are 4 columns throughout. There are 2 round ones, so one is down here, one is off to the right. There's a square column and a square column. So obviously, just as important as the walls, structural columns will probably be built around the same time. So I'm going to be really quick with this exercise. I am always going to start a SketchUp model, probably either building up the floor first or the walls. And in this case, I want to do the walls, only because there's not a lot, but enough that I pretty much want to build them, and then I immediately want to turn them into groups. And that's probably the biggest tip I have for SketchUp and drawing in SketchUp is you want to make sure whatever category or object you are building, at the end of it, when it's drawn correctly in your mind and what you know, you're going to turn it into a group. And the reason for that is there's what's called stickiness in SketchUp. So as I start explaining this, I'm going to start drawing and not waste your time. And stickiness is one of these things where an object and another object can become attached, and it's not an easy thing to detach. 2 planes kind of collide and become one. Because they're not grouped, they are basically stuck together, and it does not make life easy in the sense of editing and building. And so for the most part, I'm going to show you a little bit of that, or preventing that. Okay, so all I'm doing here is kind of extending the wall. I don't have to do this, but at the same time, I want to just extend to that y-axis of ours, which is that green line. And I just built 2 rectangles, and it just made my life easy to do that. And then literally that little line that separates those 2, I'm just going to delete. And that happens quite a lot for me in SketchUp. The way that I draw in SketchUp, I'll have these interior lines that don't mean anything, and I don't want a division of the actual wall in this case, and so I'll just clean it up. This now becomes one shape. How you know it's one shape is because it's shaded, it's that lighter gray, and then this allows me to grab pretty much push and pull. You'll hear me call it press and pull or push and pull. I don't know where I'm locked in with press and pull, but push and pull. You'll move your cursor over. You'll see that when you move this tool on top of that shape, that shaded shape, it'll basically get a little hatching dot matrix pattern on it. You'll just snap on the left side of your mouse and you'll pull up, and that's, AKA why it's called the push and pull. So we are going to build these walls at 12 feet. Again, and I'm going to, of course, zoom out, orbit a little bit, and as I zoom out, I'm just rolling my trackball on my mouse, and to orbit, I'm just pushing down on the trackball button, if you will. And hand, the hand tool that you'll see straight north, if you type H on your keyboard, that just allows you to pan, literally. So it makes life a lot easier, I should say. Again, I'm building these walls. Now, I'm building the walls with the rectangle tool, but I could just as easily build them with the line tool, but I find that the rectangle tool is a little faster, and so I build with it. So literally, I'm going from there to there. And again, don't be afraid to zoom in, zoom out, yeah, push and pull. Again, move your cursor and drag up. And you're probably noticing that my one wall was shaded in gray, and this happens to be shaded in a light blue. I would not worry about that at all. That is okay. When we get into materials a little later, maybe that matters. But for the most part, you know, again, you can see my two walls are still shades of gray based on shadow and sun in SketchUp. And again, in this case, I'm ready because I built some walls to turn them into a group. I'm missing this wall, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to select window selection, because as you know, in SketchUp we have planes. We have planes, individual planes, and we have individual edges that literally I could select individually. If I accidentally delete one, you'll see that I have an empty box, if you will, and that's what SketchUp is. It's basically a 3D modeling tool that builds with just surfaces. It's not solid building, and that's why it's, you know, called SketchUp. It's fast, it's quick, it's easy. So for here, again, I'm going to select this whole entire wall, and I always do a window selection because selecting individually, that takes a long time. Of course, you hold down your control key to add to the selection. I mean, that's just a long time that you need to waste your time with. So go ahead and window select. When you want to make and turn an object into a group, you just type G, and immediately you'll get this pop-up window. You don't always have to type G. You actually, on the right side of your default tray at the very top, I could also just name it there, but I find this to be more convenient. And then I name the walls north, south, east, west. Maybe at this point, probably not, but maybe at this point I know what material is going on that wall. So then, you know, I might name it wall paint. You know, and if I know the Benjamin Moore number or Sherwin-Williams number, I might input it, but that's getting a little too detailed. Most of the time, as you guys know, when you're working in SketchUp, you're working in the design process of schematic design. Everything should be loose. But again, sometimes you know a lot of information at the very top or start of the project also. So, you know, I'm usually in projects where we don't know that much. Everything is brand new. We're still getting to know the client, getting to understand the client. But in this case, I am going to say wall west and leave it at that. I always use capitalized letters. That's just the way that I work. But again, lowercase is fine, just the same. There's no standard. There might be a standard with the office that you work with, but in this case, while we work in our classroom, it's really up to you, and you won't hear me, you know, express any opinion about it. And then I'm just going to hit create. Now, what's beautiful about creating objects as groups, you just snap on the object to basically highlight it, and the whole object should select. Now, mind you, hold on here. I feel like it's selecting, but I could see that it is not. Hold on. Maybe was talking too much there. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Group. All west again. Replace. I'm going to hit create. So it knows that I have another object that I created as a group. I'm going to hit yes here. And then literally, you guys, I should be able, again, to select the object, and it automatically select all of the parts and pieces, but I am not getting that information. Okay, let's try this one more time. This is good to see. You could tell I wasn't planning this. So let me just make sure everything is selected. It is. Let's see if it's, yep, looks good to me. So again, if it is not liking G for group, let me just go to the pull down menu. You know, again, when something kind of stops you, or there's an obstacle, especially with software, instead of maybe typing the shorthand keys, I always go to the pull down menus, which, you know, are the long way to do things, but again, it's also good for you guys to see. So under the edit pull down, if you there's make component or make group. I am truly making groups. And you guys can see, I didn't get a pop-up window for the pull-down menu, but off to the right it says solid group, one model. And again, I'm going to name this wall west, but I'm now going to name it with a V3, only because this is the third time I am making a wall, or a group I should say, of this wall. And I just deselected. Now again, let's cross our fingers. Okay, there we go. Okay, for some reason, I don't know why, but it didn't like my shortcut G. I don't know why, but you know what? I'm going to move on. So again, this is where, as you guys can see in the upper left-hand corner, I have not saved my model. Good time to save. So File, since I have nothing saved, I'm just going to say Save. For myself, on my desktop, I have a folder for us, and I am just going to call this A2 for assignment 2, of course, and then Cafe, and I'm just going to call this example. And very much like all my tech classes with you guys, literally I constantly say you can never save too much. Same thing here, you guys. Now that I have a group, I am going to make a copy. So how do you make a copy? You make a copy through the Move tool. I'm going to select the Move tool. I am going to select the object, and so where do I want to select it? I think it makes the most sense at this corner. So I'm going to copy it from this corner to that corner. So I'm going to select there. And when you go to Move, in the middle of Move, how you make the actual copy is you just select the Control key once, literally, bam. And then literally move into where you want to copy it and move into the actual point that matches the other side. And bam, bam. So, you know, again, I kind of made myself a little simple wall as a group, and literally I copied it where I needed to. You might not have done that. You might have done them separately. All good. I'm always trying to look into software and saving time. And again, one thing you might be noticing, I have this line. This edge, if you will, got copied in my group. If you want to edit a group, no big deal. You just double click the object. You go into basically this boundary box editing mode. You go in and select what you like, don't like, need to add, select it, hit delete, and literally how you get out of group is just by snapping away from the group, and you're back to a group that looks nice and clean. I am probably going to do the same here. But maybe not also. So at the same time, let me make a group out of this wall, the larger wall. And again, G didn't work, so I'm just going right to the pull down. I'll look into that a little later. And again, name it off to the right hand side. It usually falls under entity information, and again, I named the other walls west, or walls west. So here I'm just going to say what wall, again I like my capital letters, wall. This is actually south, I believe. And so again, it is a wall. Now in this scenario, because I made a separate group and a separate group, I don't think I'll be able to get rid of that line, but once I apply material to it, that shouldn't be an issue. Okay, so that is your wall. So for every wall that you create, literally in here, some are at an angle, some are straight, you are going to want to group them. So you kind of want to get in this habit in SketchUp of you build, you create a group. You build, you create a group, and it just and you name it properly so you can find it at any time, and it just saves you a ton of time later with this stickiness, which I'm hoping to show you in this little video. Okay, so floor is what I'm going to move on to next. But since I keep talking about the stickiness, I'm going to build up a column here. And again, we have two columns that are round, two columns that are rectangular, and I'm going to keep and build the rectangular one just because it's right in front of us. And so again, 12 foot in height, if you will. Again, we have another one. They're kind of hard to recognize. These little rectangles are part of vending machines because this is millwork off to the side here, but again, unless I have explained that 15 times, who would know that, right? So literally rectangle, rectangle. And again, modeling, 3D modeling is of course easier when you have designed it. You did not design this, so ask me questions because that will come in handy. So I'm not going to make a group out of these columns so that hopefully I can show you a little bit of stickiness, so you understand what that is, because I'm not sure I've shown that in class. And again, orbiting is just pushing down on your trackball. Okay, I am going to save again, of course, right at this second. Control S is save, but of course I just want to show you where I'm going. Okay, so the floor. I'm going to build a floor again with the rectangle tool from this corner all the way far left for me right now. So that would be along the y-axis. The y-axis is the green line that you're looking at. The x-axis is the red, and then of course if we're building along the z-axis, we're looking at the Z-axis, which is blue. So again, just something as references, visuals. And then of course, in SketchUp, automatically we have our object snaps that are on, but sometimes you have these inferences points that actually help immensely as you build. But for us, this is pretty simple as we begin. We're just grabbing the end point of the end of the 2D model. And I don't have an actual size to abide by. I'm just going to build a floor generically about, looks like 10 to 15 feet beyond the CAD drawing, just like this. And again, it shades immediately. And if I press and pull this, and again, I said the press and pull, push and pull. If I select it, again, if you move your cursor or your tool on top of it, it'll turn into that dot matrix pattern, hatch pattern, and I can select it, and I can, again, move into the negative or into the direction I want to build, and I'm going to make my floor 1 foot. So you could just type the dimension in the middle of the building. It's actually pretty smooth. Now, because I didn't turn these columns into groups, I am going to take a look. And you can see that underneath that floor, because I didn't group those columns, I have this like empty space, this negative space. Again, for us, if you started off like this is the first time we're building, a bigger or a larger project in SketchUp, that was okay with me. But as you begin possibly your final project in SketchUp, which is going to be between SketchUp and Revit, you definitely want to make groups out of those. Now, if I go back in this scenario and I turn those columns into groups, it's not going to clean that up. And if I try to, like let's say, how come I can't just press and pull? We might be able to. Yeah, so literally I can even it out. I can push and pull objects left and right, but I'm still going to be left with that shape. But again, this is underneath the floor. Structural floor, so we shouldn't see this anyway, but it's just something to be said. And then again, in a scenario where, let's just say I needed to move this column, oops. So I'm going to select that column, and notice I always build with windows, crossing windows, and if I go to move this column, yeah, it actually is placing it on itself. I was hoping it was kind of attached, but that's right, it's not. Yeah, so you're not really seeing the stickiness yet, but this is literally a case that it is. So again, just be careful. I probably, again, if I started off like this, I would probably just hit Control-Z for undoing, and I would get back to not having a floor. I then would select my columns, and again, I would turn them into groups. And again, you should be able to type G and turn that into a group, but it's not working for me. So again, I am just going to grab Make Group. I'm going to name it off to the right-hand side. Column, rectangle, and I'm going to say that one is East. Really. And again, I could just name it number 1, number 2, whichever and however naming convention makes sense to you, of course, use. And then literally you should have a group, which is great. So same thing with the other column, select it, group it, name it, and that's kind of a habit that you're not going to get rid of. If that was last, I'm going to say V2 or just number 2 to begin with. And bam, bam. So again, as you move onto the walls, as you move onto the millwork, I'll make another video for, but walls, columns, and floors probably should be your first building blocks in creating this cafe project. In this case here, I'm going to build the floor starting at the origin point. So again, it doesn't matter if I start at the origin point or that corner that I started earlier, as long as you are engrossing the CAD drawing, you should be good. And again, now that I've grouped those columns, again, if I push and pull in the negative 1 foot, literally I have a nice clean slate. But again, to be very precise, we are not making camera views or going to make camera views underneath, so you can cheat a little bit. Let me just say I did use the word cheat, but in this case, again, you want to also as a designer, build as precise as possible so that 3 weeks from now, when some walls maybe move or change for the client's request, or we find out something in the HVAC system doesn't allow us to build a wall there, or maybe we need to move it to better lay it out. You have a model that is great, and it'll be easy for you to make those changes. So I hope that helps. I don't want to make this video any longer than it is. Let me know if you have any questions, and let me know if you want me to add to it. So I will be adding a video for millwork, and I'm going to add one for those drop ceilings that we were working on in class on Monday. Okay, well, thank you very much, and we will talk again soon. Bye.